What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to build and deploy an AI-powered keyword extractor, and we're going to build it with React using Vite. We're also going to be using the Chakra UI library, and we're going to use the OpenAI completions API, which is extremely powerful, and this is just one of pretty much endless types of projects that you can build just by customizing the prompt that you send to that API. And I'll talk more about what I mean in a little bit. Now, I chose this because I don't know about you guys, but when I write a blog post or an article or anything like that, and I need to come up with keywords, I struggle to know exactly which ones to use. So this app will allow us to put in any type of text, any article, whatever we want, and it will extract the best keywords from that text. So to give you an example, I'm going to grab the blurb here from my JavaScript course and place that in here and click extract keywords. It's going to reach out to the API. It's going to open this nice modal. We're using all these components from Chakra. And you can see we get back some pretty good keywords in a comma-separated list. So JavaScript, data types, functions, loops, DOM manipulations, basically everything that I teach in this course. So it works pretty good. Now, when it comes to formatting this, I'm not just getting an array back and then, mapping through it, adding commas and making each letter uppercase. All I did was specify that I want it to come back like that in the prompt that I sent to the API. So you can use this for absolutely anything. I specified that I wanted keywords and I wanted them formatted in this way. But it's just so powerful, you could use this for anything. All right, so as I said, we're using Chakra. We have some cool elements, like if we don't put any text in, we have this little toast come up. So it's more than just a tutorial on the API. We're building this from absolute scratch. Now, as far as deployment goes, I've once again partnered with Hostinger, which is one of my favorite all-in-one hosting providers. And I'm going to show you how we can deploy this project in about 5 seconds using their hPanel platform. So they offer reliable hosting, top-notch support. Their packages are extremely affordable, as you can see, $2.99 per month. And they offer more than just hosting. It's also, you get a free domain, free email, you get SSL certificate, you can build up to 100 websites on one account, 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, unmetered traffic, 24/7 support. And if we click on Add to Cart, you'll see you have the option to pay 12 months, 24, and even 48 months with 3 months free. So if we come down here, you'll see that you're saving a ton of money here, and I'm also going to give you a coupon code to save you 10% more. So we'll go ahead and add Traversy and apply, and that brings it down to $129, and that's for 48 months of hosting and all of those features. And you guys know I don't take a lot of sponsors. I only promote products I absolutely believe in, so you're getting a great deal with Hostinger, so check them out. Links in the description, as well as the code to save you 10% more. So let's jump into the terminal, and we're going to get started. Now, I also want to mention I have a blog post that is basically this entire tutorial in written form at traversymedia.com. I'll have the link to that in the description if you want to grab any snippets from there. Also, I'll have the link to the Github Repo. Now, I'm using Vite. If you want to use Create React App, that's fine. But to use Vite, we're going to say npm create. Obviously, you need to have Node.js and npm installed. So we'll say create Vite at latest, and then the name of the folder, which I'm going to call AI Keyword Extractor. Now, if you're using Windows with Git Bash as a terminal, you might have some issues when it comes to asking you what framework you want to use, because sometimes the arrow keys don't work. If you are using Git Bash, what you can do to get around that is do -- and then -- template and then React, and that'll just use React automatically. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to select React as my framework, JavaScript. If you want to use TypeScript, you can. And then let's cd into that folder, and then from there I'm going to open up VS Code or open up whatever editor that you want to use. Now, one thing I want to do before I start the dev server is in the Vite config, I'm going to change the port number, because by default, when you're using Vite, it's going to run on, I think it's 5173. I want to change that, so I'm going to add a server object here and just set my port number to 3000, which is, of course, completely optional. And then we have to install our dependencies. You can see there's no node modules folder, so I'm going to open up my VS Code terminal and just run npm install or npm I. So that'll set up all our dependencies. And then we'll go ahead and run the dev server. So npm run dev. And it's going to start on 3000 for me. And then it just shows us this landing page. All right, now as far as cleanup goes, it's really not a lot. You don't get as much boilerplate code as you do with Create React App. So a couple things that I do is delete the app CSS. And then in the index CSS, we're going to get rid of everything here, but just keep the file in case you need it. We're not going to need to write any CSS because we're using the Chakra UI library. And then that's pretty much it. We can also get rid of the React logo in the assets folder if you want. And I do have 2 images that I want to bring over. So let me just grab those real quick. And you can get them from the GitHub repo. So if you go in the GitHub repo in the assets folder, there's this light bulb and this OpenAI logo. So I'm going to bring those into assets. And you can use your own images or no images, doesn't really matter. I just think it makes the project look a little better. Now, in our app.jsx, I'm going to go ahead and just clear everything out. And I have the React Redux snippets extension installed. So I'm going to say RAFCE, enter, and that will give me an arrow function component. Okay, and then for now, let's just return a fragment, and in here we'll have an H1, and I'll say my app. And I also want to change on the index.html, just get rid of this title here, and let's say AI keyword extractor. Okay, and then if we check the site, we should just see my app. So the next step is to install Chakra. So I'm just going to open a new tab and just search for Chakra UI. Now, this is a UI library, so basically it gives us a bunch of components for things like cards and alerts and all types of stuff, modals. And it's similar to like Material UI, which I would say is the most popular UI library for React. But I like Chakra better just because you don't have to write as much code to get the same results, the same kind of UI components, and it looks really good. So if we go to get started, there's a couple things we need to install. Of course, we need Chakra, and then we also need Framer Motion, which is an animation library. So I'm just going to copy this npm install and these 4 dependencies, and let's come over here, stop the server, and we'll just paste that in and run it. So that will install those. And then what we need to do next is bring in the Chakra provider into our main file and wrap our application or our app component with that. Now, if you're using Create React App, you're going to want to do this in the index.js file, but if you're using Vite, you're going to do it in the main.jsx file. So let's bring that in. Let's say import, and we're going to bring in Chakra provider, and then we just want to wrap this with that. So we'll bring that up in here. Okay, and now if we go to our project, you should see, did I save that? Oh, I need to run the server again. All right, so notice that the H1 is now small because there's no sizing applied to it, because there are some base styles with Chakra. The font's different, there's no margin, etc. Now in the app.jsx, I want to basically just create like a container. So we're going to use a couple components from Chakra. So let's come up top here, and I'm going to import. And there's 2 things I want to bring in. One is the container, and then I also want to bring in the box. And a box can be anything. It's not a card. They do have a card component, but a box can be any kind of container with whatever background or border, whatever you want to use. So the main wrapper here, wrapper component, I'm going to use box, and I'm going to give it a couple attributes. So with Chakra, we basically pass in attributes or props for any styling we want. So for example, I want to set a background, so I'm going to set BG, and I'm going to set it to blue, and you can see we have all these options for different shades, and I'm going to choose 600 for this background. This is basically like our body, like it's going to wrap around our entire app. And then the color is going to be the text color, which we'll set to white. And then I'm going to set a height of, let's say, 100 VH. So it takes up the whole height. And then I also want to do padding top. Now I could do a string here and say 130 pixels. I could do that, or I could do a number. So I could use curly braces like that. That's going to be the same thing, 130 pixels. So if we go ahead and save that and we take a look, we should have a blue background. Now I want to center everything, so I'm going to use a container here. Let's say container. We'll move the H1 in there for now. Excuse me. And then I'm going to set a max width here. So it's kind of like Tailwind, where you can set a max width of like XL or 2XL. I'm going to use 3XL. And then I want it centered, so I'm going to add the center content attribute here. So now everything's in the center. All right, now as far as components go, the first thing we're going to create is a header. So we'll create a file. Actually, let's create a folder first called components. And then in there, we're going to have a file called header.jsx. And then I'll do RAFCE. That'll give me an arrow function component. And I'm going to bring in just a couple things from Chakra. So I want to bring in heading. And I'm going to bring in image and text. And those should all be pretty self-explanatory. And then I also want to import the light bulb logo. So I'm going to just call this logo, and we're going to import it from /assets/ and then light-bulb. And that's an SVG. Okay, and then as far as what we want to output, let's just do a fragment here. And then first thing is going to be the image. And just like a regular image tag, this takes in a source, and we're going to set that to the logo. Let's just say alt. We'll set that to just logo. And then I'm going to set the width of it to 100 pixels. So we can just say 100. And then margin bottom, let's do a string of 1 rem. Okay, so that's going to be the image. Then we have the heading. So that's going to wrap some text. It's going to be AI keyword extractor. And just a couple props we want to pass in. The color is going to be white, and the margin bottom is going to be 1 rem. And then finally we want under the heading just text, and let's say paste in your text below, and we'll extract the keywords for you. And for text, let's just add a font size of 25, and I'm going to align it to the center with text align and set that to center. All right, so let's try this out. We're going to bring it into our app.jsx. So import header, and we're going to just replace this H1 here with header. Let's take a look. All right, I spelled extractor wrong. Extractor, all right. So that's our header. Now we're going to have a footer as well, which is going to be very simple. So let's just get that out of the way. So footer.jsx, RAFCE, and let's bring in from Chakra. I'm going to bring in, what do we want? We want box and image, because we have the OpenAI logo. I'm also going to bring in text and flex. And that's going to be from Chakra UI React. And then as far as what I want to return, let's make this a box component, and I'm just going to give it a margin top just to keep the footer pushed down a bit. We'll do 50. And then inside the footer, we're going to have a flex component, which is just a flex box. Let's set justify content to center, and let's set align items to center as well. And inside that, we'll have our image. So image and the source. We're going to bring in the OpenAI logo, so let's do that. So import logo from /assets/ and then OpenAI.png. Okay, so that'll give us the logo. I'm just going to add margin right to this and set that to 1. And then the text that we want to display. So the text we want to display is just powered by OpenAI. And that's it. So let's go back to app. Let's bring in import footer and just put that right under the header. Okay, we'll check it out. Good. So next thing we want is the text input, right? We need to have a form or an input where we add the text that we want to extract the keywords from. So we can close up header and footer, and in components, let's create a new file called TextInput.jsx. We'll just map out an arrow function component, and then I'm going to bring in just a couple things. Now we need use state because the state that is the text that we're going to type in the text area is going to be a piece of state for this component. And then from Chakra, we just need a text area and also a button. All right, and then actually there's one more thing. I want to just validate the text, make sure that there's actually text typed in, and there's a toast component that we can use. So we need to bring in the hook called use toast. That will allow us to initialize our toast function that we can use to make that pop up. Now the state for this component we're going to set here using use state, and it's going to be called text. And then the function to manipulate that state is called set text. Set that to use state, and the default value for that will just be an empty string. Now we're going to go into the output here, and let's just make that a fragment. And then this is going to have a text area and a button. So let's start with the text area. That's going to be self-closing, but we do have a bunch of props we want to pass in. So BG, I'm going to set that to blue.400, which is lighter than the background. And let's set the color of the text to white. We're going to set padding to 4. And let's do a margin top. And we'll set that to 6. Okay, and then for the value, actually let's do a height. So height I'm going to set to 200. And the value is going to be the text state. And then on change, so this is going to fire off whenever we type into the text area. So we want that to fire off a function. And we're going to pass in our event parameter. And then we'll call set text, which is going to change the state of text to whatever we type in. So we'll do e.target.value. That'll be whatever text we type in. Okay, now for the button, let's go under that, say button. And for the text of the button, we'll just say extract keywords. And just pass in a couple props here. So BG, I'm going to do blue.500, and then color white. And let's do margin on the top. We'll set that to 4. And the width of the button, I'm going to set that to 100%. And then we can also add like different states for hover and so on. So if we say underscore hover, we can set that to double curly braces, and then we can put styles in here. And I'm just going to do BG and set that to blue.700. Whoops. Blue.700. Sorry, that has to be a string. All right, and then finally we just want the on click, and that's going to call a function called submit text, which we'll create now. So let's come up here, let's say const submit text, and that's going to be an arrow function, and I'm just going to console log the text state. Okay, and then we'll come over here and test it out. So let's open up our console and just put something in here, and then if we click this button, we're going to see that logged in the console. Now one thing I want to do is I don't want to be able to just submit this without any text. I don't want that to work. I want to have that little toast component pop up if we do that. So we already brought in use toast, which is the hook. So we just need to initialize here toast, set that to use toast. And then what I'll do is in the submit text, get rid of that, and let's check our text state. So we'll say if text is equal to an empty string, then we're going to call our toast function, and this takes in an object of options. So first is going to be the title, which I'm going to set to, let's say, text field is empty. And then we can also add a description, and that's basically like the subtext. So I'll just say, please enter some text to extract keywords. And then let's do a status. So basically this will determine what it looks like, what the color is. We want it to be a red error status. So we're going to pass in error. And then the duration is how long it's going to show. I'm going to do 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. And then we can also do is closable, which means if you put true, it'll have an X so you can close it yourself. But I'm actually going to say false because I don't want to have that. I just want it to show for 5 seconds and then go away. All right, now on this if statement, let's add an else. So if there is text, then for now, let's just do a console log. We'll test this out real quick. All right, so if I don't have anything in here, if I submit, now we get this cool little toast component that pops up. It should go away in 5 seconds. Yep, there it goes. And if I do pass something in here, then it does work. All right, so the next thing is the extract keywords function, which is where we're going to make our request. Now, I don't want to make it from within this component. I want to make it from within app.jsx. So any global state is going to go into that. So the way we can do that is instead of console logging, we're going to call a function called extract keywords, and we're going to pass that in to this component as a prop. So let's say extract keywords. And now in our app.js, what we can do is add a prop called extract keywords and set it to a function called extract keywords in this file. So we're going to put that right here. So let's say const extract keywords, and that's going to take in text because we passed it in right here. So for now, we'll just do a quick console log just to make sure that this is all hooked up correctly. So let's just reload and pass something in here. So that is working good. Now, as far as making the request goes so that we can get our keywords, we need to first of all create an API key. So to do that, let's go to the browser and let's see, just go to platform. If you go to platform.openai.com, you need to create an account there. You can see I'm already logged in. And then if you go to view API keys, you can click on create new secret key, and you just want to grab that. You want to copy that. All right. Now, before I do anything with that, I just want to show you that you're gonna get a certain amount of free requests, which is pretty generous. If I go to usage, you'll see on March 20th, I used 19 cents. So that's when I think that's when I started to build this project. But you can see I've only used $2.60 of my $18, which is like just free credits that you get. I will end up paying for more credits because I'm going to use this quite a bit in multiple projects, but you can get away with a lot for free with just the trial credits that they give you. All right, so that's kind of how this works, and you can read more about it. But I'm going to go to my project now, and I'm going to put this API key in an environment variables file, or .env file. So let's create a new file in the root called .env. Don't put it in your source. Put it, right in the root. And just like with Create React App, we can have environment variables in here, but instead of using React_app and then the key, we use Vite and then underscore and then whatever we want to call it, which I'm going to call it OpenAI _API _key, and then I'm going to set it to my API key. Okay, make sure you use your own. I'm going to delete this one afterwards. And then I'm also going to put the URL in here that we need. Now where you can get this is if we go to API reference and then completions. So this gives us an example of this is a curl request and shows you what we need to send. We need to send the model. We need to send a prompt, which this is really important, and I'll get to that. But the URL is this right here. So I'm just going to grab that, put that right in there. You can also put the model within the URL, but I'm not going to do it like that. We're just going to attach it as a param. So let's save that. Now you do have to restart your server if you do edit your environment variables. So let's go ahead and do that. And then you're also probably going to want to put that in your git ignore. I don't think .env is in here. I don't see it unless I'm missing it, but I'm just going to add that down at the bottom, .env. And I also should mention that even though we're using a .env file for our API key, this is still the front end. So if you're building a production project where you're going to have a lot of users coming to your app, then you're probably not going to want to do it this way. You're going to want to have some kind of custom backend where you can store your key on the server and then make a request to your server, and then your server makes the request to OpenAI. All right, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this. This is fine for like a portfolio project or something. So now that we have that, let's start to add our state, our global state, and that's going to go in our app.jsx. If you wanted to use like the context API or Redux, Redux would be very much overkill for this, but you could use it. But we're just going to stick to using use state within our app.jsx. So let's say import use state from React, and then I'm going to go right here and we're going to add our couple pieces of state. So one is going to be for the keywords that come back. So set keywords will be the function to manipulate that, and set that to use state, and the default will just be a string, empty string. And then let's add a piece of state called is open. So this is basically if the modal is open or not, because we're going to have a modal display the keywords. So let's say set is open, and that's going to be false by default. And then we're going to have one more called loading. Of course, that just determines if we're fetching the data or not. So let's say set loading, and that's going to be false as well. All right, so now that we have our state, let's come into extract keywords, which fires off once we submit our form, and let's set loading to true, because now we're starting the process of fetching the data. And then set is open, I'm also going to set that to true, because the spinner, right, the progress bar that we're going to show is going to be within the modal. So I want to open the modal right away. And we'll get to that, the modal, in a few minutes. But for the request, we're going to have to send an object with a bunch of options. So we're going to create an object here, and the first thing is going to be the method, which is a post request. And then we're going to have our headers, and there's going to be two values in the headers. The first is going to be the content type, which of course is going to be JSON, so it's application/JSON. And then next is the authorization. Authorization is going to be our token, not a token, but our API key. So we have to prefix that, the API key, with bearer. So I'm going to use backticks here, and I'm going to say bearer space, and then whatever your API key is, which we have in the .env. Now to access variables in the .env, we need to use import. So it's not process.env, it's going to be import.meta.env. And then whatever I want to use. So, like for instance, we want the key, so we can just take that, and that should give us the key. All right, so that's the headers. Now the body, we're going to set the body, and we're going to use JSON.stringify here, just to turn this into a JSON string. And this is going to include a few things such as the model, which is going to be text-DaVinci modal-003. So that's the model we want to use. And then the prompt is what is really important here. So the prompt is what we want to tell the model to do. Okay. Now, if we just pass in the prompt, if we just pass the text that we type in, it's not going to know what the hell we're talking about. So we need to prefix the text that we're passing in through the form with what we want to tell it to do. And I'm going to say extract keywords from this text, and then I'm going to tell it how I want it formatted, because I want it to come back as a comma separated list with the first letter of each word uppercase. So let's say make the first letter of each word uppercase and separate with commas. So you could specify however you want this formatted, but you could specify anything at all. It doesn't have to be extracting keywords. For instance, if you were building like a virtual assistant for a travel agency, you could say, respond to this question as if you were a travel agent. And then whatever the user types in, it's going to get sent to the API with those directions. And it's going to give you back as if, answering as if they were a travel agent. If you were building, let's say, something where you type in a zip code and it gives you back the city, you could just direct that and say, give me the city for this zip code, and then concatenate the user's input. So you can make this anything at all. So you don't need these special APIs to do like keywords or to do zip codes. You can have this completions API be whatever you want. And that's why I think that this is really, really powerful. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to add on to this 2 new lines, so /n/n, and then we can concatenate the text, and then I'm just going to concatenate an empty string. All right, so this is the input from our application, but this is the directions that we're telling the AI to what to do with that text. Now there's a couple other things we want to add in the body. So we want to do the temperature. So temperature we're going to set to 0.5, which is right in the middle because this is a value between 0 and 1. And this controls the randomness. So when you set a higher temperature, the API will generate a more diverse or more creative responses. Because it will sample from a wider range of possible words. The downside is it can lead to more unexpected results or unpredictable results. But then if you set it too low, it can generate more conservative and predictable responses. So I think 0.5 is a good place to be. The next thing we're going to add is max_tokens, which is going to be the number of words that are returned back from you. So we're going to say 60 for that. And then the last thing we're going to add here is frequency_penalty. So from what I understand, frequency penalty, the higher it is, the more it discourages the generation of repeated phrases or words. So it makes it less repetitive, your responses. And I think it can be between -2.0 and just 2.0. So we're going to do 0.8. Okay, it can be repetitive, right? Because we're just getting the best keywords. It doesn't need to be something different every time or totally different. But there's so many different parameters that you can send. So if you look at the documentation here, model, prompt, things we already use, but there's also like this top P, stream, long probes. There's frequency penalty, there's presence penalty. So you can really customize how this responds. All right. And I need to look more into this as well. I'm just like everyone else, I'm just learning this stuff. I actually had GPT help me with the exact options to pass into this to get the result that I wanted. So I think that should do it as far as the options go. So let's go under options. And we're going to make our request. So let's say const response. Now I want to use async await with the fetch API. So let's make this function asynchronous. and then we're going to await on fetch. And we have the URL in our .env file, so we can say import.meta.env and then Vite. It's going to be Vite OpenAI API URL. And then we'll put a comma and then pass the options in as a second argument. So that'll give us the response. Now, of course, we want the JSON data. So let's say JSON, set that to await response, and it's going to be response.json. Now, what this will give us is an array of choices, or we have an array of choices available on this. And it's going to look like this. So we have JSON and then choices, which is an array, but I just want the first one. And then I want the text property of that, and that's going to be the keywords. That's what we're looking for. And then we'll just trim that up. Okay, so let's actually put that into a variable. And then I'm going to console log that. And we also want to set our keyword state to that data variable, because that's what we're getting back is the keywords. So let's say set keywords and pass in data. And then finally, we just want to set loading back to false once it's fetched. So just with this, we should at least be able to see the response in the console. So let's go over to the browser, and I'm just going to grab this text from my site again and paste that in. And then if we click that, it might take a second, and there we go. So JavaScript data types, functions, loops. So it's plucking out all the best keywords from the text we pass in. All right, now obviously we want this to show in our UI, so we're going to use a modal for that. So let's head into our components folder here, and let's create a new file called keywords. We'll say keywords modal.jsx. All right, and Chakra has a modal. It actually has a few components we have to bring in to build the modal. We need the header, the footer, the content, the overlay, etc. So let's start off by just doing RAFCE, or however you want to structure your components. And then we want to import a bunch of stuff from Chakra React. So all the modal pieces, and then we also want the circular progress component because we want to show a spinner when we're fetching the data. But we also want text, we want a button, modal, and then we have the modal overlay. Let's say modal overlay, we have the modal content, the header. So modal header, modal footer, and you can get all the code from the repo or from the blog post I mentioned if you don't want to write all this out. So modal body, and then the close button. So modal close button, and then finally we want the circular progress. Yeah, this right here. So that's what we want to bring in now. This modal is going to take in a few props. So let's destructure and take out the keywords. Those are going to be passed in. The loading state is going to be passed in. Is open pertaining to the modal. That's going to be passed in. And then a function called close modal for when we want to close it. All right. Now, as far as what we want to return, let's make this a fragment. And in here, we're going to have our modal as the wrapper. So let's do that, and then pass in is open, and that's going to be set to whatever the is open prop is. Okay, and then on close, we're going to set that to whatever close modal is that's passed in. And then we want the overlay, so modal overlay, that's self-closing. And then the content, so modal content, and the modal header, and for that we'll just say keywords. And then under the header, we're going to have the close button, so modal close button, that's going to be self-closing, and then the body, so modal body, And the modal body, we're actually going to pass a couple things in here. So I want to say display and set that to flex, and then align items to center. And let's also say justify content to the center. And in the body, we want to check to see if it's loading. Now we're passing in loading as a prop. So we're going to use a ternary here and say if it's loading, then we'll just open up some parentheses, else open up another set of parentheses. So if it is loading, then let's show the circular progress. So circular progress, we're going to pass in this attribute of is intermediate, and then the color, you can set that to whatever you want. I'm going to set it to blue dot 300. All right, so that's our progress bar. Now, if it's not loading, then obviously we want to show the keywords. So we're going to put that into a text component. So we'll just go like that and say keywords. Okay, and then under the body, so under the modal body, we're just going to have the footer. So say modal footer. And in here, we're going to have a button to close, another one. So we'll say button. Yeah, and the text will just say close, but on this button, I just want to add color scheme. We can also use that and just say blue. And then let's do MR equals 3 and on click. So on click, we're going to call that close modal that we're passing in as a prop. Okay, now that close modal isn't defined yet. So let's go into our app.jsx and we'll go right above the return and say const close modal. And all this is going to do is set the is open state to false, right? Because remember, we have in our state, we have this is open. So we're going to call set is open. So set is open, and we're going to set that to false, okay? Now we just need to bring in the modal and embed it. So let's come up here, let's say import keywords modal, and we're going to come down here. We want to embed it, and we have to make sure we pass in the right stuff. Now where you put it doesn't really matter because it's a modal. It's not directly in the layout. So I'm going to put it right under the container and say keywords modal, and then we get to pass in the keywords, which we have in the global state, so keywords. Then the loading, we want to pass that in from our global state. And then is open, pass that in. And then close modal, we're going to pass that in. Oops. Okay, so that should do it. Let's try it out. And you can see it just works. So with Vite, it doesn't reset the state whenever you save a file like it does with Create React App. So it's already showing us the modal. So I'll go ahead and just grab another course here and grab some text. Paste that in, extract. Okay, so we can see the circular progress while it's fetching, and then when it's done, that goes away and we get our keywords. So React, Flux, Context API, so pretty good. Works pretty good, I think. And we can close that up. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as the project goes. Now I want to deploy this, so we're going to go to Hostinger. I'm going to show you just how easy this is. So we're going to log in. And it's going to bring us to this control panel. And of course, you set up your domain name. So I'm using traversydemo.dev. In fact, if I go to traversydemo.dev, I just have a 403 because I don't have anything here in this website. But it is connected to my premium web hosting plan. So I'm going to go to Manage. Now from here, if I wanted to use Git, I could do that by going to Advanced, and then you can go to Git, and you can just add your repository. You do need to add an SSH key, of course, and you could do it that way, or you could do it an even faster way by using, if we go to Files, file manager and access the files for this domain. And basically we can just quickly drag over our production files. So we have our public HTML folder, which right now is completely empty. So I just need to bring my production files over. Now to get my production files, whether you're using Create React App or Vite, we need to stop the server and run npm run build. So with Vite, it's going to give us a folder called dist. So right here you can see, and these are our production files, okay? Basically just these two. We don't need the Vite favicon. But those are the only two files we need to upload. So I'm going to go ahead and just display this in, whoops, wrong option. Display this in Finder. Okay, and then we'll just go into dist. And I'm going to go to my hosting or file manager here. And I'm just going to bring over this file in this folder. Okay, so you can see it took about 2 seconds maybe, if that. And then if we come over to the domain and I reload, there we go. So very, very fast, quick, easy deployment. Now to just test it out, let's grab, I don't know, we'll get some text somewhere else. Let's go to maybe styled system. You just need a good chunk of text. We'll just grab this right here. All right, so let's go to our deployed version. Extract keywords. It's going to reach out to the API, and we get back Chakra UI, conditional, semantic, tokens, scale, colors. So it picks out all the good keywords. You're not going to see it pick out like the or which or filler words like that. It's going to take out the keywords that stand out the most. And of course, you can modify it however you want. You can modify it to do something completely different. The main purpose of me doing this project is not just for you to build a keyword extractor. It's so you can see how to use this API, and so you can use it for whatever you want. So this right here, you can give it any instructions you want to do with that text. So the possibilities are endless, and I just encourage you guys to get out there and really explore with it and create your own projects. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, the link to the repo is in the description. There's also the blog post link, as well as the Hostinger link with the promo code. So check them out if you're looking for some really reliable web hosting. All right, so thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.